Alright, here we are back, and we're going to be taking a look at how we can actually start to extrude some of these surfaces inside of ZBrush with this hard surface workflow. So I'm going to turn on the poly frames, and we've got our model back with our different poly groups that we've got. And we're going to take this shape here, and we're going to extrude this shape. So I'm just going to isolate this shape, holding it down Control and Shift, and I've got my select rectangle, which you can see here. And I'm just going to isolate this piece. Let's try that again. Just click there. All right. I think I accidentally drugged just a little bit as if I was drawing a marquee. I just need to hold down Control and Shift and click on that. Now the next thing I need to do is if we extrude this thing out, we could put it on the Move tool and just the Move brush or Transpose tool. Just click on the surface and it gives us this line here like that. We could drag this thing up like that, and if we bring everything back, you can see what's going on here. So that will extrude the surface up, but it's not going to give us the results that you want. So you can see it's producing this really bad geo. So that's one thing we could do. The other thing we could do is if you hold down Control and click and drag out here, it actually extrudes out geometry. So let's get this back to where you see everything. Hold down Control and oops, I need to have that masked off. So in the earlier video we just looked at, if we hold down Control and click on that, it'll mask that. And if I hold down Control when I click on this, it actually extrudes the piece off. So this is cool. It's got some nice geometry on it and everything. We could take this thing and scale this down a little bit to give like a beveled kind of look. And that's what we're looking for. The only problem is if we turn off polyframe and turn off the mask actually, and turn on the polyframe, you can see that this is one poly group. This whole thing is that it extruded out, and if we use the polish by feature, it's going to really start to soften this up. We really need this to be its own poly group in here. So I'm going to step back and hit undo and get us to the point where we're isolated again. I just wanted to show you that's kind of what happens whenever we extrude that thing out and hold down Control and use that. We really need to hold this edge, and we need to make some new poly groups for this polish by feature stuff. So I'm going to put it back on draw, isolate this thing, and we're going to look at the area and geometry, and we're going to be looking at, I'm hiding Dynamesh, we're going to be looking at edge loop. So we're going to spend a lot of time in here. I would have drugged some of these things off into my own custom interface, but there's so many options in here that we're going to be messing around with and using that I just go ahead and leave this open. So this open with the things that I've got on my interface really helped me to build out some of these hard surface shapes and things like that. So the thing we're going to be looking at is something I picked up from an artist. His name is Tom Paul. And it's basically this group loops. Normally if you hit group loops and there's this 4 on here, it will actually add 4 loops around the outer edge of this thing. We only need 1, so we can drag this down to 1 loop. Sorry, I'm going in the wrong area. I'm messing with the panel loop stuff. We'll look at that later. Need to put this on group loops and then do this loops 1. So the other thing it also does, it'll automatically polish like what we're going to polish down here with this thing here, and it's set to 50. So we really don't want that up very high. I maybe we'll give it like a value of like 2 or something like that. So it's going to hit group loops, and it's really going to give us a piece of geo that's really small. It's going to be hard to see, and that's all we need. And after it does it, it's going to mask off things, but we want to take this move transpose tool like we did before. I'm going to get rid of the mask and then hold down Control and just click on that, and it'll mask everything off except for this new group. Now we don't have to hold down Control when we drag this out. We can just drag this thing out, and you can see what it's going to give us here. I'm going to hit Control H to hide the mask. So it's given us this new section that we've got here, and it's also given us this new poly group that we have here. So when we do the polish by feature, it'll hold that thing for us. So again, we can put it on scale and just take this little section here, scale that down, and we'll make sure it looks cool from all different angles like this. And I think that looks pretty good. Now we can get rid of our mask, and I really only want to work on this surface and this surface, and so I'm going to mask that, bring everything back. I'm going to inverse my mask, Control I, And then remember, it's going to tear up that edge quite a bit if we don't smooth the mask. So hold down Control and just click once to smooth the mask. And now we'll do the polish by feature. Like that. And you can see how it's giving us this nice edge here. So I'm going to hit Control H to hide the mask and turn off polyframe. And here's that new section that we got. So this is looking cool. So that's one method of extruding out. The other way that we can kind of extrude out is if we want to build something very specific for the shape that we're working with. So let's isolate this section, and we're going to use that slice curve again. This time I'm going to make it larger in the back, so I'm going to hold on Control Shift, drag out, add a point here, and give it a little bit of curvature like this. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to build up another curve over here. Just tap Alt to lay down the point, lay this down here, and keep building around. So I'll build something like that. And again, remember, if you're on the slice curve, if we just want to take away from the selection that we have, we just hold on Control Shift and just tap once on this surface. And now I'm going to make this into a polygroup. Control W. That's the hotkey for that. So if we hold on Control Shift, just click once in the open viewport and it brings everything back. So if we want to get this change that we've made on this side, remember we looked at mirroring and welding. We're going to mirror and weld. And now we've got this shape. So this is building out something for us to extrude out with. Okay, so really what I need to do is take this transpose tool and I need to lift just that section up. So if we mask that off, we could lift this thing up, but that's not really what I'm looking for on that. Okay, so what we can do is with that mask made, we can hold down Control, click on this thing, and keep blurring that mask out until we get a nice amount here, like this, nice fall off. And now we can move this surface up like that. You can see the look that it's going to give. It's not going to be nice and hard edged, and it's kind of dipping into there just a little bit, but I'll raise that up. Maybe I did that mask just a little bit too far, so I'm inversing that, holding down Control and clicking. So again, I'll move this up just slightly like that. Okay, now if I look at this, I need to polish this thing up, obviously. So I'm going to isolate just this section here, make a mask for it, do the inverse, and then now I'm going to click on that to smooth that out, and I'm going to use the polish by feature. You can see it's going to make it look quite a bit better. And I'll keep dragging that up. I really want to get this looking a little bit better and through here. So part of the deal is why that doesn't look so great in through here is we did an extrusion and there's not enough geometry in this area compared to everywhere else. So it is possible that we can use a tool what's inside of ZBrush to fix some of this. So I'm going to isolate this section just by itself. Let me click on that. So that's the other thing about these long skinny polygons. ZBrush has trouble kind of selecting that stuff sometimes. So you can see when I was just trying to get that piece, it might have grabbed something else, so I can hold on Control Shift and just click on it and isolate just that. So I want to rebuild the topology in just this section. So ZBrush has got some tools for that. So if we go to Z Remesher, this is really a tool that I thought was, you know, for making new topology for an entire model. But if you take this freeze borders on this thing and give it a target poly count, which I've got symmetry turned on, so it'll recognize symmetry. And let's just say I want to target about 2,000 polys in this area. If I turn on this freeze borders and say Z Remesh, you can see it actually does a really nice job of rebuilding this topology in just that section for us. So now we've got something new to kind of work with in this area. So I could take this section, maybe this and this as well, and then select rectangle so I can get that inverse of that. That's the only part that I have issue with this slice curve, is trying to get the inverse of that. So I always have to select this select rectangle and do a drag in the open viewport like that. So again, that's another reason why I want to build up this custom interface for myself, just to make it really easy to get to these things. So I'm going to mask this whole thing. Hold on Control, just click in the open viewport, bring everything back, Control Shift, just click in the open viewport, invert my mask, Control I. So you should, you got to get used to these hotkeys and this workflow, and it's just going to take some practice. There's no way around it, So I just masked that thing off and blurred the mask, hold down Control and clicked on it, and now we can do polish by feature. Just drag that a few times and let go, and you can see what we've got here. So we've done some fairly easy extrusions and maybe a little bit more complex extrusions for shapes and things like that. The other thing that we can do is we could isolate this section, mask it. I'll do the inverse of that. And let's say we're not really happy with the shape on here. You can use any of your normal sculpting brushes and just kind of maybe build that surface up again, maybe smooth it out just a little bit, and then use the polish by feature again and keep getting that to work down. And maybe you're happy with what's going on here in the front. So if you know how to make a mask, you can just hold on Control. You can add to this masking that you got going on here and kind of smooth it out a little bit and through here, just so paint lightly. And wherever you're not masked, that's where it's going to do this polish by feature. So let's get it to a good state there. And now we hold down Control and click on here, and we'll blur the mask out a little bit more and polish that up. And so you can see we've even refined that shape a little bit more. So like here we've got kind of a dent going on that I'm seeing here in this area. So we could maybe do the clay tubes and just sculpt on this just a little bit, smooth it out. Hold on Control, paint on our mask, maybe blur. I'm not going to blur yet. Let's do the polish by feature. Now blur the mask and then just polish just a little bit. And you can see we've kind of cleaned that area up just a little bit. And then if you want, you can always run the polish by feature on the entire thing. Just remember that it's going to continue to pull on the entire surface. So if you're really, really happy with the shape or a particular area, you might want to mask it off. Alright, we're going to look at a few additional techniques, and I had some technical difficulties, so I'm not going to be able to actually sculpt live and show you these things. I do have it saved in the undo history, but if you take a look, basically on this section I built up a mask, and you can hold down Control and you can just paint on an area, and I wanted to target this area for polish by feature like that. So you can build up the mask and then just hit Control I for that, and it's going to give you just the inverse of that mask right in there, and you can do the polish by feature on just that area. The other thing I wanted to show for masking is if I wanted to isolate the visor and I want to kind of clean up some of these dips and things like that in the visor, I want to build a mask just for the visor part, and then you can have just that part masked and hold down Control and blur the mask whenever you bring back the visibility of everything. And what that does is starts to pull the mask inward like this and smooth it out. And once you get happy with how far it's pulled into the surface, you hit Control I and that will inverse your mask at that point. And then now you're free to use the polish by feature in that area. So that comes in handy sometimes as well. And I'm going to push forward. So this area, if I turn on polyframe, you can see that I'm just pulling out this this poly group. And I was basically just using the brush. If we go to our brush settings and click and dock this over, there's auto masking within your brush. So if we open up auto masking in our brush setting right here, you can see that we can do this mask by polygroups. If we pull that up to 100%, when we click and drag out, oops, sorry, I'm not on the right brush here. You need to be on the move brush. And we've got this mask by polygroups. You can see it's going to just pull out that polygroup area. And it's asking me, since I have undo history, do I want to keep that change? No, I don't. The problem with this is that it builds up these really thin polys that you got to kind of deal with. So I was showing how you can actually take this selection and under visibility, let's scroll down here and close up geometry. So under visibility, if we have something that's just isolated for this, you can grow the visibility of that thing out like this. So when I hit this grow, it's basically going to give me this visibility there. But I was missing some little tiny pieces. It wasn't perfect for what I needed, so I grew it out, hid this part, and then made this into a poly group, and it gave me these little slivers that I needed to kind of deal with. And so if I isolate just this section, what I was able to do is hold down Control and Shift and add the Alt modifier to these little pieces. Make sure you're on the select rectangle, and you can take away. So hold on Control, Shift, add the Alt modifier, and you can see it would take that little piece and hide it. So I hid these and then made a new poly group for that and got those little pieces together. And once I got those, everything isolated together, this made a new poly group out of that section. The other thing I did, it made a nice sliver along the entire shape here. Eventually at some point I take the slice curve and I sliced through here and through here, and then I combined this poly group with these little slivers to get the big shape going again. So I'm stepping through on that. And before I did that, I was actually, using the polish by features. I was also showing that if you wanted to hold these edges on here, you can just paint a little mask on the corners before you do the polish by feature, and that will hold those shapes that you have there. So I'm going to push through here. This is where I was trying to separate these little slivers in the back using slice, and eventually I got there to where I was able to take these shapes and then make a new poly group out of that whole thing to turn it back into one big shape, and then kind of smoothing that area out. The next thing I was trying to show is that if I isolate just this section, I wanted to build a nice kind of ridge along this thing, so I was using the clay tubes brush to build up some kind of shape, and you can be really kind of sloppy with it. And then when you're done with the shape, you can go ahead and slice this. So I built up the shape, used the slice curve, and then sliced through this, and then masked everything off, masked these corners, because remember I wanted to hold those shapes on there, and use the polish by feature. And it does a really nice job of making these kind of cool arcing kind of shapes at that point. And then I was showing, I just put it on the move brush again, and remember that brush setting that we had, you want to turn auto masking by poly groups, you want to turn that off so you can pull everything all together at that point. So just push that thing off and looked at it from different vantage points, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to pull the surface in here just a little bit like that. And then I was also showing that we can rebuild that topology. So I didn't like the topology that I had right here with these long slivers of triangles, and so basically I was using the Z remesher. If you isolate just that part by itself and rebuild, like have it there, and I go to geometry, and then I'm going to hide edge loop. Let's go to Z remesher, and I put about a target of 4,000 polys and said freeze borders. At that point it freezes the borders so they stay, and then it rebuilds that topology and gives you some better topology in there. And I was going to try to polish just these corners, but I wanted to hold the edges, so I did a slice curve right through here and then right through here, and that gave me new geo to work with whenever I'm using the polish by feature like this. And let's just see after it was run a few times. So I was kind of just targeting these areas, so I built up a mask and did the inverse of that mask right in this area, and then I ran the polish by feature, and it was going to give me some nice looking geo in that area. And then I was looking around the model. I wasn't too happy with this. There was a little dip in the back of the model there, so I wanted to fix that, and just wanted to show it's really easy to use the clay tubes. You can build this up. I masked everything else off except for that little section, and then you can polish by feature and through there. And then whenever I got done, I was not too happy about how far this was sticking out, so I just kind of actually smoothed out that particular area right in through here. And then after I was done, I had a mask built up to where it was only kind of showing in this area, and I used the polish by features to get this final shape that you see here, like this. So that's a lot for extrusion. Again, we're going to be looking a bit more into the panel loops, the panel groups under edge loop, these panel loops, and that's really going to drive things kind of forward. There is another kind of extrude type in there, but since we're going to be looking at that, we'll be looking at that separate.